right, thank you everybody for coming down. This is a great presentation we have for you today. If anybody ever worked with Cindy McMahon, you've always heard about her talking about her successful sister, and we have her here in the flesh. And without further ado, Denise Huntington. Thank you. So is this low? Can I talk right into it? Okay. So welcome. So are you all, some students, some prospective students? Perspectives. And all the rest of you are already students? Yeah. Cool. Okay. So welcome. My name is Denise Huntington. On which side shall I go on? This side maybe. Let me switch. I'm right-handed. Okay. So welcome. So I'm a senior court reporter and I work in Supreme Court, New York County, Manhattan, criminal division, all criminal. I do now for the last 15 years. I have been a court reporter since let's just say I've been a court reporter for a lot of years. Probably some of you were maybe not bored or maybe very little. This is my 35th year as a court reporter, 35 years. I began, here's my little path. So I began in 1987, there's the year. I began in, back in those days we had what we called per diem court reporters. So you had, how are you? I see some friends that are back again, thank you. Back in 1987 we had per diem court reporters, so you had a way to get into the courts without taking a test and passing and, you know, getting in the real way, I say, the real way. You kind of got a cheat way in, so you would be able to freelance, and there wasn't even actually any testing. You would actually go to the courts and sit in and do an internship, and if you were lucky enough, a supervisor may have liked you. That's how I actually began, and they said, hey, would you be interested in working per diem? And I actually, in 1987, I didn't graduate yet. I went to what was then Stenotype Academy, and I didn't graduate. I was interning. I needed 3 more exams. I went and did my internship and in civil court, Manhattan, lower court, and just like I said to you, the supervisor said to me, would you like to work per diem, because they needed court reporters, and I said, I didn't even graduate yet. I can't work, you know, I'm not even writing what you work. And he said, well, I've seen your work and you can do it. So long story short, I did. I began working, and then I went to school at night, and I finished school at night. Took a little longer, but I got my degree and then went on from there. So that's how I started. I did do a little bit of freelancing. I'll talk to you a little bit about that. I'm not personally, I did not like freelancing personally. You're going to see, as you spoke to Cindy or maybe Karen or anyone who you've spoken to here, there's so many fields. There's so many little branches that you can go into from court reporting. You don't have to go where I went, obviously. You may love freelancing. So we're going to talk about it a little bit later on, but when you do get in your last class and you intern, it's really, really important to go everywhere and try anything there is, because you may love it. I didn't love it. And I'll just tell you what I didn't personally like. I'm a creature of habit. I like to have an office. I like to have a desk and a chair, and I like to go to the same place every morning. But with that comes longer hours. I'm at work now. I'm at work much earlier, but let's say 9 to 5 at least every day, 5 days a week when you're working in the court system, at least. And then there's more time after that if you have a jury, if the jury's deliberating, and sometimes you have to be in the courtroom pretty much the whole day. So a lot of that freelancing, you can have half that time. You can work half days, you can work for a couple of hours, you can make your own schedule, which is really a great thing. What the downside personally for me was I wanted to go to the same place. I wanted to have a space for myself. So it's really the only reason why. It's not a terrible thing. It's a wonderful field to have really great friends who I've tried for years to get them into the courts, and they freelance forever, make great money, will never leave. So you have to find your own little niche. But I did try it. I worked for literally 6 months, and then I decided it wasn't for me. But okay, so in 1990, I became a court reporter permanent. I took the lower court test in civil court, and then, I'm gonna grab this piece of paper, because as the years go on, numbers change. So back then, the starting salary in lower court was $45,000. That's what I started with in lower court, okay? Now, as of April of 19, the starting salary is $77,000 to start in lower court, okay? Plus you get benefits and vacation and sick days, and a really important thing is pension. So if you go into the field of freelancing, there is no pension, so you have to account for that for your savings. Not saying it's a horrendous thing, but you just have to be aware of that you won't have a pension. There's tons of things, and you should talk to people about financial things, 401k plans and things like that, to get you money, because the future, down the line, the future, when I was 24 years old and I started out, someone said to me, you know, you should really get into the court system because you need a pension, and back then you say, who cares? You know, I like what I'm doing, but it's something that you really have to think about for the future, okay? So then in 1997 is when I took the Supreme Court test, and each one of these steps up is another exam. So you need your graduation or your degree from school, plus you need a little experience to take the court test, to take the lower court test, and then the next step up the ladder would be the Supreme Court test. The Supreme Court test in 1997, salary began at $75,000, and today, as of April 2019, it's $90,000 to begin. So that's just the base salary. That's my cheat sheet. Okay. So, and again, with that comes benefits, vacation, sick days, pension, and more money. Because the higher you go up, the bigger the cases are. When you start in lower court, if you're in civil court or family court or lower criminal court, you do the low-level trials, the low-level cases. You do what's called misdemeanor cases or very low-level felony trials. Now where I am, I see a lot more cases. I'm jumping ahead, but let me stay here. I see a lot of more high-profile estate cases, so there's more of a chance to make more money as you go higher up the ladder in your job. And then we'll get back to that. So this is what I think is really an important thing. How do you stay current and getting involved in the profession? So you don't want to be one of these reporters who stays limbo and doesn't move on. And I have some really good friends. And there's trial and retrial. That is the very first child that was on the milk container, the missing child. And that was a cold case murder that years later someone came forward, and so that trial was called a cold, that's what happens when someone comes forward years later, it's called a cold case murder. So these are murders that are never resolved, and then someone will appear with some new evidence and they bring them to court. And then most recently this was the Roderick Colvin cold case murder, also a cold case murder, and that was on Dateline exclusive recently. So here is the Puff Daddy, and this is what I said, if you all remember, Jennifer Lopez was dating Puff Daddy at that time, and we got to see Jennifer Lopez in the courtroom, so that was pretty cool. But so this was a trial, and again, this was all that you got to see in the papers, and if you could see, even by the collage of pictures that they have there, there's no live pictures. It's not like an in-court picture, because at that time, they were not allowed to have any cameras in the courthouse. This is a sketch. So this is one of the crane collapses. This is supposed to be me. So what happens is during these media trials, very often there are sketch artists that come in the courtroom. And they have been around forever. And they come in, and this one, she's done about 4 for me, so I know her well and I know her work. Christine Cornell is her name. But we have a mother-daughter team that comes to Manhattan, and I think they're forgive me, but I think they're probably like 95 and 70 years old, and they still come to the courtroom and sketch these big trials. But I never go to them personally because they did one for me once, and me being vain, I was like, that doesn't look anything like me. Not that this is a great appearance, but at least they get the hair and like, you know, they sort of get what you look like, sort of. It is supposed to be a characterization, not supposed to be a photo of you, right? So what happens is they come into the courtroom and they sketch what's going on. Thousands and thousands of pages of testimony. And sometimes they ask for testimony to be read back. Well, the court reporter does that. On most trials, I'll say, especially in Supreme Court, the transcript is produced. Many years ago, we used to pull up our notes, and when there was a read back, we'd have to read from the notes. You guys know what I mean when I say notes? Okay. I say notes, right? You pull up the paper, you pull it up, and you would read from your notes. So nowadays, we read right from the transcript. You could also read from, did I go back? You also can read from your screen if there's real time. But a lot of times we read from the transcript because the attorneys will participate in what's being read back, what should be read back, what shouldn't be read back to the jury. This particular case, we read back for over 4 weeks. We read almost the entire trial. It was a 4-month trial. The trial began, and it was 4 months, and we read back to the jury for 4 weeks. And we became intimate with the jurors. That's how they knew me by my first name. The judge would say, okay, Denise is going to read such and such, and we would read, and you would sit down, and what you do is you sit down in front of the jury, and you take out the transcript, and you begin to read, and you read, and you read for hours until they have found what they want or what they need to hear back again. So this particular case was a lot of readback. It was trial 1 and 2. The first trial was a mistrial. And I don't know if any of you have seen it on television, but there was one juror who was the juror who wanted to acquit. And so it was what we call a hung jury. So the trial then had to be retried again. And I was lucky enough to be the reporter on the second trial as well, which is really awesome because I had a huge dictionary. It was really easy the second time, and it was nice money once again, right? You did it once, then you do it again. So this is Colvin, and this is now, you can see now we've kind of come to this age, right? Way back when, there was pictures of people, you know, they just took pictures of their own from newspapers or whatnot. Now these are live shots. On the left, this is a not very becoming picture of me from Channel 4 News, but this is Channel 4 News that was in the courtroom. And now the courtroom has now access, there are cameras, there are videos, and Dateline on this trial was filming the whole entire trial. So it was a little awkward. This is the first time that they were sort of on our face the whole time. So if the judge is sitting here and I'm the reporter, I'm sitting here and the witness is right here behind me, and here's Dateline's camera right here, pointing right in my direction. So every morning I would have to say, you know, let me do a makeover here, because today could be the day that I'm on TV. Like, not every day, right? You don't know when they're gonna use your clip or not clip. Then you have to say, okay, no chewing gum, don't chew your gum, don't make faces, and I'm a believer in, I do not face the jurors when I take testimony, because I do have a very expressive face. I make faces, expressive. Not that I'm like making fun faces, but I'm very expressive. So for years and years I thought, I'm not facing the jury because I'm going to do something that eventually somebody's going to say, oh, did you see the court reporter made a face for that testimony? Maybe she's right or whatever. So to avoid that, I always had my back to the jury. I've done it for years. Just a preference of mine. So in this particular case, you can actually see in this picture where these people are. This is just like a pre-trial sort of thing, so it's not the actual trial. But where these people are, that's the jury box. So that's where the jurors would be, and my back is to them. The witness is here. Sometimes I face the witness. Sometimes I give the witness the side of me so that I can look at the witness if I need to. personally I get over that was I would pick a point, and my point would always be a spot on the floor. And I would just stare at that spot. So right now, as I'm talking to you, I'm staring at the crack in between the squares. It's what my eyes just went to. And I would just stare at it, and I would just write, and just write, and just write, and it calmed me, and it worked. In the courtroom, guess what? Sometimes I still do it. I'm not afraid anymore in the courtroom, but sometimes the testimony is fast. We're all human. People speak quickly. Not everyone speaks slowly. Some people speak faster than others. So when I experience that in the court, I'm not an interrupter, as they say. I don't interrupt every 2 seconds. I'm not that way. I've never been that way. I've been a hold on, hold on, hold on. And when I can't hold on, then I stop you. I get a record. My record is clean. I write real time, but I hold on. I don't let it get away from me, if you know what I mean, and get overwhelmed by it and then have to stop the person every other word because I'm like flustered and keep stopping the person. Don't get me wrong, I've stopped many people in 35 years, many people. There's a way to do it, right? There's a way to say, excuse me, you're gonna have to slow down a little bit. Or excuse me, could you repeat that? I didn't hear the last word. Or excuse me, did you say you went to the left side of the car, not the rear? So there's a way, and it's not like, what? What did you say? It's not that way, right? So there's a way, and so if anybody who's a court reporter forever comes to you and says they've never stopped anyone, they're not telling you the truth. Because we all have to stop someone at some time in our career. Yes, it gets better as you get along, and there are very few times, I'll say, that I get into that situation. But it happens. It happens to all of us. It'll happen to you. So it's not something that you're not going to go in the field and you're not going to perform perfectly every single day, but you're going to do the best that you can because you're going to achieve a certain goal that you'll have, and then you're going to get help as you go along. You're going to have someone slow down. Or when you go in a courtroom and you know for a fact that there is an attorney who speaks so fast before you even start the trial, you say, oh no, Mr. Smith, he's so fast. I'm going to be going crazy this whole trial. I'll say something like, so you didn't have coffee this morning, right? No caffeine. No caffeine while we're on this trial. And so, you know, there's a way to kid around, but when all's said and done, you have to do your job. It's important to get a record. So if you must stop them, you must stop them, because it's important to get a record, okay? So this is